Welcome. Ooh, there we go. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Bat Release 2020. I am Laura Stastny. I'm the director of Nebraska Wildlife Rehab. And I'm so excited that you guys are logging in and joining us here tonight. As we get started, if you guys have a question, feel free to type it in. And we are going to answer your questions as we can as we move through the night here. We're getting started now. I'm going to say a few words. And our staff is getting ready and getting the bats ready to go ahead and release. So we'll probably be here for about 30 minutes together, maybe 35 minutes together, and then we'll be all done. So feel free to ask those questions and we'll answer them as we can. For those of you guys who come out every year to the Joslyn Art Museum to watch bat release, we are so sorry that we are not there with you tonight. But of course, we all know that because of COVID-19 restrictions that we just have to do things a little bit differently this year. So normally, if you come out, you would realize that I sit up in front of the crowd and I say a few words about Nebraska Wildlife Rehab, and we talk about the bats of Nebraska and bats in the world. And I'm not going to do all of that tonight just because we're losing our daylight here tonight. But I would direct you to some of our Facebook and Instagram posts today, and then also ask you to go to our website at nebraskawildliferehab.org to learn more about bats, to learn more about Nebraska Wildlife Rehab, and always feel free to contact us if you need something. So one of the things I want to point out about tonight, or a few of the things that I want to point out about tonight, is that you're going to notice that everyone here is wearing masks, and if they're handling bats, they'll also be wearing gloves. Of course, our staff always wears gloves when they handle bats at bat release, but you'll notice they have an extra layer of protection on tonight. They have latex gloves on over their fabric bat handling gloves. So, of course, you might expect us to be wearing masks tonight because we're coming into contact with other people. We're going to try to maintain our 6-foot distance as the CDC recommends, but sometimes we might not be able to for the good of the bats. But there's something else that I want to point out tonight that some of you may not know or may not have thought about. And that is that we are taking extra precautions right now in wildlife rehabilitation because there are some things that we don't know about COVID-19. It's a new virus. Of course, there are things that we don't know. But one of the things that veterinary epidemiologists are concerned about and are doing studies right now are that potentially COVID-19 could be transmitted from humans to certain species of North American wildlife. And the wildlife that we're concerned about are the felids, like bobcats and mountain lions, the mustelids, which is the weasel family, so things that you know of like mink and American badgers, skunks, and all the different weasel species. And so, and then also North American bats. So because of that, we take extra precautions to protect those animals. I want to be clear, we have no evidence that North American wildlife can get COVID-19. But our concern would be that if they could, that it would kill our wildlife. And of course, we are here to protect and save wildlife. We are not here to transmit a disease that might potentially wipe out bat populations. So we're all taking extra precautions tonight. And every day in our rehabilitation process, we are taking extra precautions with our bats. So once again, I want to be very clear. We have no evidence that North American wildlife can get COVID-19, but we are being responsible enough to protect our wildlife and then also to protect each other and follow CDC guidelines. So we hope that all of you guys are out there and being safe. Okay, so have there been any questions? Has anybody asked a question yet?
Nope, we're good. How many bats are we releasing tonight?
Oh, that's a great question. So I knew that people were going to ask that. I should have answered that already. We have over 400 bats that are going to be released tonight. And I see that Jennifer Crowell is asking, how do we know when it's time to let them go? We let our bats go when it's dusk. And the reason that we do this is because naturally big brown bats fly at right around dusk. And so we try to mimic that as closely as possible. Given that we have a public bat release generally we release them a little bit earlier than they would naturally emerge, but right now they're pretty much ready to go. If that question was about what time of year, we have a very specific calculation for what the temperatures are, what the forecast is going to be, and how high the winds are. Today we had highs in the 70s, we have lows in the 50s coming tonight, and the winds are calm. And so it was a really good night to release them with several good days coming after today. So that being said, What other questions do people have?
Ruxan H6 wants to know how many teeth a bat has.
Oh, no. I don't know how many teeth a bat has. Well, okay. All right. Thank you very much, guys. Different species of bats have different numbers of teeth and different numbers of types of teeth. But I am going to shout out to one of my staff members. Laura, where are you? Do you know how many teeth a big brown bat has? No, I don't. Oh, we don't know. Somebody should get on the Google and find that out.
And are there more or fewer bats than previous years?
We have about the same number of bats as we did last year. So we're in that 400 plus range. We did things a little bit differently today because we were minimizing the handling of bats. So we didn't hand count everybody today. But there are more than 400.
Laura, do you want to share why bats are under tremendous pressure?
Yeah, absolutely. So we always want people to conserve and protect wildlife and wild spaces. Of course, that's part of our mission. But we are at a point in North America and in fact across the world where our bat species are under tremendous pressure. And most of those reasons that they're under pressure and their populations are in decline are human caused. So there's habitat destruction, of course, as well as white nose syndrome that is actually in some places in North America has wiped out 90% of the population of bats in certain areas and of certain species. And then we also have wind turbines and pesticide use. So one of the reasons why we do bat release every year is because we want you guys to become ambassadors for bats, to teach other people about bats and to help us protect them, because just the people out here tonight are not going to be able to do that alone. So we need your help to protect bats in North America and across the world. And another thing about tonight, everybody that you're going to see out here tonight is either staff or bat handling volunteers. So we are a really small crowd tonight. It's going to be much different than we normally have it at the Jocelyn. Other questions right now?
Yeah, Connie would like to know, how do I attract bats to my bat house?
Ooh, we'll talk about that in a little bit. We're going to get to that. But I did just see that Leslie, who is a veterinarian at the Wildlife Rehabilitation Center of Minnesota, just typed in that big brown bats have 32 teeth. Thank you, Leslie. I really appreciate that. Woo, Leslie! I feel kind of sheepish for not knowing that now, but you know, that's how that goes. Okay. Let's say, everybody already has the bats out. Now, technical difficulty. I'm going to try to flip my camera around so that we can get started with bat release, and we'll continue to answer your questions. Hello to people who are saying hi, Laura. I love you guys. I'm having a technical difficulty, so I'm going to walk over here to my technical person. It's gone. How do I flip it?
Where did the flip? You might not be able to flip it in the middle of the live stream.
Oh, I might. Oh, I don't want to turn it off. Oh, here.
There you go.
I found it. Okay. So you guys, I'm learning how to use some new technology here. Don't mock me. I'm getting old. But this is the yard where we're going to release the bats. And it's a little different, of course. Normally when we're at the Jocelyn, we're mostly on cement and a really well-manicured lawn. And there are 1,000 of you out there helping us make sure that no bats hit the ground. But tonight, it's going to be a little bit different. So most of our staff are going to be spotters. I'm going to do this right now because all of our staff is standing up here. Hi, everybody. So everybody is out here tonight to help make sure these bats have a safe return to the wild. And I'll try to talk to them a little bit as we go forward. Anybody want to say anything yet tonight? No? No?
Release is the best day of the
Yay!
year.
We like getting rid of our bats. They get a chance to go back home again. So, all right. So you guys want to take your spots, and we're going to do one big cage of bats first. So all of you guys who come to bat release also know that when we release bats at bat release at the Jocelyn, we have multiple small cages. And that allows us to spread those bats out so that you all get an optimal look of the bat release. But tonight what we've done is we've left the majority of our bats in their bigger hibernaculum cages so that they can go quickly. And bat release will go faster than it normally would. So what we're going to do is, can I have you guys take the small containers off the table and put them underneath? What we're going to do is we're going to open one of these larger containers and let the bats fly from it. We're just on a table here, so we might actually have to lift that cage up, but we're just going to try something different. For the last 10 years, we've done things exactly the same. And so this is going to be a little bit different tonight. Ellie Hofler, Dottie Mitchell says hello.
Hi, Dottie.
Hi, Ann. Hi, Easter Day family.
Hey,
We wish you guys were here. Yes.
Bobby, age 9, would like to know how much do they weigh?
So big brown bats weigh, it depends a little bit on whether they're male or female and what time of year it is. When they're hibernating, they weigh a lot more, right? So they weigh anywhere generally when they're healthy between 14 and 23 or 4 grams when they're hibernating. But in the spring and summer, I would say a healthy weight is 14 to 19 grams for big brown bats, and the females are bigger than the males. Yep, somebody just asked what species are we releasing because they missed it. It's big brown bats, and if you're just tuning in, you're at Bat Release 2020, Nebraska Wildlife Rehab's annual bat release virtual version this year, and hopefully the only virtual version we ever have to do. Okay, so I'm going to flip this around again, and I'm going to try to get close in to see some of the bats, and I'm going to let Ellie open this cage. Now, the bats were really, really rowdy earlier, and now they're all quiet. They're being all chill. These are females. So if you guys want to see, this is a funny looking thing. The bats are all hiding on the screen here behind the towel. So they're hanging out. So actually some of our staff and volunteers might have to encourage them. Some of them are hanging out right here. And they're pretty cute. But I'm going to get out of the way so they can do what they want to do tonight, which is fly away. So I'm going to step back, and then maybe Ellie and Heather, you guys might have to encourage them, or Amy, somebody. You might have to just do a hand release, because they've all decided to go back to sleep. So for you guys, I'm going to do the best that I can to Facebook Live this. I'm gonna stay in vertical orientation. But Alex is also here doing video and photographs, so we'll have a lot more that we'll post later on. I don't know. See, I'm not going to be fast enough to follow the bats, I don't think. So we're going to watch them from here. Otherwise, the video won't follow them. Are you guys seeing them? I can see them. One just flew right by me. Somebody's asking, what does white nose fungus look like? When it is apparent, when you can actually see it, it actually just looks like white fuzz on their face or other parts of their body. It did get its name from its appearance on bats' noses. It looks like they have like spray foam or something on their noses. But sometimes bats don't show any visible signs of the fungus. And we can only tell that they have the fungus either from looking at them under a black light or from doing an actual swab test. They can also have damage to their wings, their wing membranes from white nose syndrome. So there's a lot of things that biologists and veterinarians and wildlife rehabilitators look for when they're looking for a bat with possible white nose syndrome.
How many species of bats live in Nebraska?
So in Nebraska, we record 13 species of bats. They are all, we consider them native because they come here themselves, but one, the Mexican free-tailed, is not here very frequently. There are only a few recorded cases of it in the state of Nebraska over the last 100 years. Doesn't mean there aren't more, but those are the ones that we've seen. Of those bats, 9 of our 13 species in Nebraska are considered at risk. And one is a federally threatened species, the northern long-eared myotis. Someone is at Patrick. Hi, Pat.
Hi, Pat.
Everybody say hi to Pat. What's the average age of these bats? This varies greatly, and it's a great question. A lot of them are first years. They have a tendency to get themselves into trouble. But bats can live up to 30 years. So a lot of them I would consider older bats. They could be 8 to 10 years. Sometimes in rehab, we get older bats that are suffering from actually age-related illness. A lot of times those bats aren't able to be released back into the wild, but once they hit a certain age, it'd be difficult for us to actually estimate how old they are in rehab. Oof, they just all fell down. Now they're going to start coming out faster. Let's see. What other questions do you guys have?
Someone asked about how far will they travel?
That's a great question. One of the questions that we answer every year for people Sometimes people are like, they don't want the bats released near their house because they don't want more bats in and around their houses. But what we know is that big brown bats and other bat species actually travel back to their home roosts. So if these bats came from central Omaha, then they will go back to central Omaha. If they came from Fremont, they'll go back to Fremont. And we adjust a lot of our protocols to adjust for that. So if we have bats that come from Lincoln or somewhere else in the state of Nebraska, we don't release them in Omaha. We release them back where they came from so that they don't have so far to travel. But we generally expect them to go back to their home roost and not to stick around for too long. Now, that being said, that's why we choose the Joslyn every year. One, they're an amazing partner, and we miss you guys. Amy, I don't know if you're watching, but yes. Okay, somebody is asking if we can show one to actually, my niece Stella is asking if we can show one to the camera. So we're going to do that. But one of the reasons why we release at the Joslyn in Omaha is so that the bats have a short route home. In this case, we are not exactly in Omaha, but we are close enough that these bats are going to have a short route home. Ellie's holding one up there, making some noise. He wants to leave. We're doing girls right now. In the winter, when we hibernate our bats, they're separated male and female. And hi, Amy. If anybody wants to know why, it's because the males bother the females in hibernation. So we separate them because the males cannot behave themselves.
Hey, Laura.
Yes.
I would like to know what happens to the bats that fall on the ground.
Okay, good question. So the bats that fall on the ground, sometimes they just make a miscalculation, and we give them another chance to fly. If they do not fly on their second chance, we take them back and we care for them until they are able to fly again. Sometimes at the Joslyn, it gets pretty chaotic and there are a lot of people out there. And so sometimes bats just don't want to fly on that night because it's too noisy or there's too many people. And then when we give them a chance to fly later, they do okay. Tonight, I don't expect a lot of that to happen because it's just a lot quieter out here. Oh, let's see. I'm going to take a peek in here again. These guys are realizing that all their friends are leaving. So they are getting ready. This might be closer up to the bats than you guys normally get to see at bat release. Hi, Hartleys. I saw the Hartleys are watching. Oh, did somebody ask about biting? Is that what happened? Yeah. So, of course, like any wild animal, bats can definitely bite. And that's why we wear gloves and we are careful with them. However, like we say with all wildlife, if you do not bother it and harm it, it's not going to unprovokedly bite you. So what we always say to people is if you are not trained and if you are not licensed, please do not handle wildlife. Call the experts if you need assistance. If you are in the Omaha area right now, then you call Nebraska Wildlife Rehab. You can also call the Nebraska Humane Society. They're our great partner. If you're in another part of the country, you've got to have a local wildlife rehabilitator or a local animal control that can help you. So always keep those numbers handy because you never know when you're going to come across an injured wild animal needing help.
And then can you go over a couple of the reasons, like why are some bats endangered again for Christian?
You bet. Hi, Liz. Okay, so there are lots of reasons that bats could be endangered in North America and across the world. In North America right now, we are focused on white nose syndrome, which is a fungal infection infecting bats and actually decimating large numbers of bat populations, especially particular species of bats. Also, there are some issues with wind turbines and bat fatalities, and so scientists and energy experts are working on modifying wind turbines to make them safer for not only bats, but also birds and raptors and other animals. And then pesticide use also affects our bat populations in a couple of ways. One, it reduces the number of insects available for them. But it also, bats can be poisoned by pesticides and they get them off the insects that they're eating. And so that has an issue, that causes issues with bats. Also, simple habitat destruction. Like all wildlife, they need habitat to survive. When we destroy the places that they live, their numbers decline. There are other things across the world, other diseases that might that bats have issues with. And also bats are killed for traditional medicine and for food in other countries. And the unregulated killing of bats for those purposes also puts bat numbers in decline. Laura Connolly, am I missing something? I got them all? Okay.
We would like to know, what is the main part of a big brown bat's diet?
Oh, big brown bats like moths and beetles. Yeah. So moths and beetles. So they are not the ones that are necessarily eating large numbers of mosquitoes. But there are lots of different species of bats in Nebraska, and the other ones do. And they will eat mosquitoes, but that's not their primary diet. They're a little bit of a larger bat. Okay. Hey, so I'm going to switch this over. I'm going to let our educator, Laura Connolly, explain agricultural pests and bats.
So big brown bats.
Whoops, hold on. I just moved it to me.
Oh my God.
Sorry, guys. I can't do technology. Okay.
So big brown bats consume a lot of agricultural pests, and so things that harm our soybeans and corn crops, and so they're a farmer's friend, and they're great to have around.
Especially in Nebraska.
Especially in Nebraska.
Awesome. Yeah. Okay. I saw another question from Corinne/Stella, who are my family members, and I missed it. So I don't know if you guys can post it again.
Someone asked, is it just an old wives' tale that they will get tangled in your hair?
Oh, great question. So I think that person asked why we weren't wearing hats, right? Okay, so it is an old wives' tale that they would get caught in your hair. I'm not saying that nowhere ever did a bat get caught in somebody's hair. It's possible. But you can imagine if these guys are eating insects and you are outside on a summer night, what is flying around your head? Insects, right? And so they might swoop down to see what's going on, to get the insects around your head. Some bats are really curious, so they might be just checking out what's happening. If you're in a yard where there's a water source, they might be swooping down to drink water. So there's lots of reasons they might come close to you, but they don't tend to get caught in your hair.
Samantha would like to know, is there a way to attract mosquito-eating bats into her area?
You guys have the good questions tonight. All right. To attract bats, there are lots of things that you can do. Number one, ensure that you have habitat for bats. Bats tend to live within a certain, depending on the species of bat, within a certain distance of water. And that doesn't have to be a creek or a river or a lake. It could be swimming pools or backyard ponds. So the other thing you can do is leave your leaves. So it's been pretty popular on social media in the last year or so to talk about leaving your leaves so that insects can overwinter under them. And that anything that helps insects helps bats. But also some types of bats, considering usually our eastern red bats, also do spend some time in the winter in that leaf litter. So you attract bats by leaving those more natural systems in place in your backyard and in your neighborhood.
Cool. I just saw a
Yep.
good one.
I'm gonna repeat something too. If you're just tuning in, you're at Nebraska Wildlife Rehab's bat release, Bats Over Omaha Bat Release 2020, our first and hopefully only virtual bat release ever. And somebody asked how many bats there were. So tonight we're releasing more than 400 bats back into the wild.
Bobby would like to know, what do we feed them when we take care of them?
Oh, great question. So it would be really tough to feed these bats beetles and moths, right? Especially with the number of bats that we have. So in Wildlife Rehab, we feed them mealworms that have been specially fed and treated for nutritional value for these bats. And it's a little bit of a challenge at first because these bats eat on the wing. Ooh, I thought that one was climbing up Ellie's arm. These bats eat on the wing. And so it's weird for them to try to eat a worm, right? And so, actually, not a worm, a larva. Yeah. It's not really a worm, a larva. And so we have to hand teach them how to eat mealworms and then teach them how to eat out of a dish. If we had to hand feed every bat we had, it takes 5 to 10 minutes to feed one bat when they're just learning. And if you extrapolate that to 400 bats, we would never have the staffing to do that. So what we do with big brown bats is we teach them to eat mealworms out of a dish, and once they do that, they tend to become little couch potatoes and eat as much as they can. Woo! Did you see that one? That one released herself. All right.
Michael would like to know, why are they making so much noise? Are they scared?
I would say I think all animals have the capacity to feel scared, so that's possible, but I do not believe that is what's going on with these bats. What they really want is to get out. So, and actually, okay, so Ellie made a good point too. The males are making the most noise because they get a little rowdy.
And their cages.
So, and their cage is closed, right? They want to get out. So we're going to get them up here and get them released. And just to keep things moving along, Amy, do you want to start grabbing some of these smaller containers and go ahead and start releasing? Who else is out here? Aaron or Frankie. If you guys want to get these smaller containers and get them open and get them out and released, that'd be great. Might as well keep it moving along. How many species of bat are there in the world? There are, right now, there are 1,411 described species of bat in the world. Bats make up more than 25% of all known mammal species on Earth.
Sorry, someone would like to know, what is their life expectancy?
Insectivorous bats can live up to 30 or 35 years. Laura, do you know about fruit-eating bats? And it was what kind? Okay, so Laura just said that the longest bat ever recorded was oldest bat ever recorded was 57 years old, and she believes it was a big brown bat. Okay. Average is 20 to 30 years in the wild. And then I saw something else and then I missed it. It went away and I had it in my head.
Mark or ban the bats
that was it.
we see to see if we get repeat bats.
Right. So we do not mark or band our bats anymore. The reason that we do that is that they're so small that sometimes the bands can damage their wings. And any other form of marking that we would use, we don't want to tattoo them, and any other form of marking that we would use would be temporary anyway. So we have ways of quarantining them, keeping them separate from each other. It's a little bat that Amy's got out right now. But we don't tend to mark them permanently. That being said, we have a very informal way of telling if we get repeat customers. Yep, go ahead. And that is that if we get a new bat and we put mealworms in its enclosure and it immediately runs down and starts eating mealworms, then we generally know that it has been with us before. And around here, we call those guys frequent flyers. Ha ha ha.
A couple different people want to know what's the difference between the bats in the big cage and the bats in the smaller cages.
The difference is simply the way that we were holding them for different reasons. The bats in the larger cages have been here longer. They went into the hibernaculum to sleep through the winter earlier, and so they were loose in these larger cages. The bats in the smaller cages, some of them are in a smaller cage and separated because they came in as males and females together from the same colony. And normally when that happens in the first year, they're like mothers and sons. And so we don't separate them in their first year. We keep them together and we give them a little bit of an enclosure to stay in together. Otherwise, we gender separate our bats. And then some of them might have been from a specific place that we wanted to keep them separate, or they came in a little bit later and we wanted to keep an eye on them. So there's lots of reasons that might be. All of the bats that we're releasing tonight have been in the hibernaculum since February 22nd. February 22nd was the last time we added any bats. We have some bats that have come in since February 22nd, but they're not being released tonight.
Do you want to talk a little bit about where we are tonight? Where are we releasing them from?
Yeah, so we are on private property in Washington County. We're not going to give a specific location, but this is the location that we are doing wildlife rehabilitation on right now. Because our wildlife center, as most of you guys know, in Louisville, we closed about 1.5 years ago. And we have a new building in Omaha, but it is not renovated yet. So we are in the middle of a capital campaign to renovate our new building and have a brand new wildlife center and wildlife rehabilitation hospital that is going to be second to none. But it's not done yet. So right now what we're doing is working on getting all of our rehab done here and then raising the funds to finish that wildlife center. Hey, a bat just flew into our space. What else, Lauren?
How can we become a volunteer?
Oh, it's a great question. So we love our volunteers and we would love everybody to volunteer who wants to. At this moment, because of COVID-19 restrictions, we are not training new volunteers. We will as soon as we can, as soon as it's safe to do so. And it's going to be a lot easier once we get that big wildlife center in Omaha open for people to come in and volunteer on a regular basis. But what we recommend that you guys do now is go to our website, nebraskawildliferehab.org, click on the link that says, or click on the tab that says how you can help, and then click on volunteering. You can fill out an application, and then we'll contact you when volunteer trainings open back up again.
How old do they have to be?
You have to be 18 to volunteer at the wildlife facilities. And if you're we have very few at-home volunteers. We don't allow a lot of at-home wildlife care. But if you do at-home wildlife care, all the children in your home must be at least 12. For everyone's safety, including the animals.
Small ones over there.
What is the best way to donate to the capital campaign for the new wildlife center?
Oh, I love that question. Thank you, whoever asked it. The best way to donate to the capital campaign for a smaller donation is simply to go online. We have a capital campaign link on the running header of our website, which is nebraskawildliferehab.org. Click on that and you can give electronically. If you're giving a larger donation and would like to pay by check or by stocks, just go to the capital campaign page on our website and all of the instructions will be there. You can also email us at info@nebraskawildliferehab.org and we can send you that information.
Laura, could you put your phone next to the cage so they can hear the bats squeaking?
Sure. I bet they're all going to be really quiet right now. Because they've decided that they're going, and so they're going to be quiet.
That's funny.
Isn't that funny? They all just went dead silent there. Sorry, if they make noise again, I will let you know.
Someone did ask, what is the purpose of the cloths in the container?
Yeah, so that's a great question. These are crevice-dwelling bats. These bats normally live in caves and rock crevices, and they feel safe in tight spaces. One of the challenges that we have in wildlife rehab is to have caging that's disinfectable, that's cleanable, which is why we don't have, a fabric cage in and of itself. But what we do is we have these, they're actually baby receiving blankets that we sew together. Actually, my mom, hi Mom, I hope you're watching. My mom sews them together for us and we Velcro them to the top and it allows the bats to get behind them or in between the cloth. It's something they can still climb. And when they get in between those crevices, they feel safe and it feels more natural to them. But the added benefit for us is that we can then take those cloths and throw them in the washer and bleach them and wash them and they'll be clean again for the next set of animals. So it's just a modification rather than like having a big rock cage for the wild bats to be in. Amy's got bats. Look at those guys. Oh, I'm gonna come over here and see if we can watch them come out by themselves. Some of them are trying to figure it out.
Laura,
yes.
Kayla would like to know, how much does it cost to rehabilitate one bat?
That is a great question.
We have estimates.
Yes, it depends on how long they're around, but the average, depending on the species of bat, is $10. $10 per bat. And we take care of almost 500 bats and sometimes over 500 bats every year. So most of our bats come in the winter, so that's why we have so many right now. But we also get more than 100 bats through the spring and summer. A lot of those are baby bats or they're migratory bats, tree-dwelling bats that we only get in the spring and summer. So big browns are definitely our most common, but also here in the Omaha metro area, we get hoary bats, eastern red bats, northern long-eared myotis, evening bats, and silver-haired bats. Those are our most common. And occasionally we will get a little brown bat. Are we finding anything else? Are you catching anything else mist-netting, Laura? In general, though? Did I miss a species that we see in eastern Nebraska? Oh, Laura wasn't listening to me.
I'm assuming no.
It's the story of my life. Nobody listens to me. Huh? I did say evening and silver.
What is the largest bat species in the world?
Ooh, giant flying fox? Yep, giant flying fox. For the general bat information, I just keep walking over to Laura Connolly over here. Laura Connolly is also a bat researcher, as well as being a Nebraska wildlife rehab educator. So.
Okay, Laura, I have another question.
Okay.
Since most kids aren't old enough to volunteer with the organization, what are other things they could do to help bats and wildlife?
Great question. You know what, you guys, the number one thing that you can do, I'll give you some things that you can do to help Nebraska wildlife rehab here in Nebraska. But the number one things that you can do is to educate yourself about wildlife with real information, and then to be an ambassador for wildlife. When somebody tells you that bats are disgusting, you give them all the reasons why bats are not disgusting. Matt, why are bats cool?
Why are bats cool?
Yeah.
They are an amazing companion to all of our farmers. They help keep mosquito populations down, and I hate mosquitoes because we're feeding our animals. And yeah, they're just great cohabitors. They don't really want to mess with us, and yeah, hopefully we can help them get back out.
Awesome. So you guys can do that. You can educate yourselves. You can be an ambassador for not just bats, but for all wildlife. You can also, oh, look at that little guy.
He's so cute.
He is adorable. And he looks like a chihuahua. Oops, let me get out of here. And then other things that you guys can do is think about habitat creation and habitat destruction. It's the number one driver of the declines of wildlife populations across the globe. And we need to be reasonable and responsible with our consumerism and our use of different goods and our use of the land. And as you guys get older and you go into different fields, we encourage you to go into the sciences and to go into any profession that might help us protect the planet for the wildlife that we have for generations to come, not just in our lifetimes.
We also love when kiddos head some donation gatherings. So gathering things like old towels and newspapers. You can go onto our website and look for our donation list, which we have a lot of household items on there. And we love when kids collect those for us, and we can collect them from them.
Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of our young supporters have birthday drives for us where they collect those newspapers and towels. I'm coming in here because they're making noise again. You guys can hear them. I call that annoyed bat, like they're mad at each other. Hey, I see my mom is on here. Hi, Mom.
Hi, Donna.
You're the best mom ever.
Thanks, Donna.
Everybody says thanks, Donna. She also made my bat mask for tonight.
And my dog mask.
And the dog mask. So you gotta love a mom who makes all your stuff. And she also makes the bat enclosure hanging. So. All right. Somebody says hi. Jennifer Weber Otten says hi, Ellie. You rock.
Hi, Jennifer.
How are we doing with the small cages? Amy, yours is done. I'm going to walk over here. Someone else is asking again. As you guys are tuning in, I'll repeat some of the stuff. We're releasing more than 400 bats tonight, and we are releasing them on private property in Washington County, not too far north of Omaha. This is where we're currently doing our wildlife rehabilitation for this year until we are able to renovate our new building in Omaha and get that up and running. We're going to have a new wildlife center and a full-service veterinary hospital right in the heart of Omaha, and we're so excited, but we need to raise the rest of our funds first before we can do that. So it's a tough time right now with COVID-19 and all the things that are happening, but we may be moving a little bit more slowly on that project, but we are going to forge ahead because we believe that those facilities will greatly not only benefit the wildlife, but also benefit our community and all of you guys who support us and want help with wildlife.
He's thinking about it.
Mom, someone is saying your masks look comfy.
They are comfy.
Laura, Sarah would like to know where is the best place to put bat houses on your property?
Oh, great question. So in Nebraska, if you're going to hang a bat house, first of all, you need to make sure it's designed well. And we can give you some tips for that. It's hard to explain on Facebook Live, and I don't have an example in front of me. But when you're going to mount it, the best thing to do is to mount it on a predator-proof pole. So oftentimes a wooden pole won't work unless you put a metal baffler on it, so things like raccoons and squirrels can't climb it. At least 8 feet off the ground, but higher is better. And also, I'm messing up the Facebook Live. And also where it gets 8 hours of direct sunlight every day. Also, a bat house in Nebraska should be painted a darker color. It shouldn't be light natural wood because a light natural wood house doesn't hold enough heat for these bats. These bats are hibernators, and when they get cold, they fall into torpor, which means they fall asleep, and it's harder for them to wake up than normal. So in the spring and summer, they naturally seek out places to roost that are warm. And that's why we say your bat house should get some direct sunlight and be a darker color when you live in the state of Nebraska. Now, if you're tuning in from somewhere like Texas, there might be some different recommendations for how you do your bat house.
Michael would like to know, why aren't we all just letting them go at once?
Well, because we guys like to watch it.
Yeah.
But it's a great question. And quite frankly, even if I was out here all by myself releasing them all, it would take some time because we have to make sure that they are getting off the ground. We don't want them to fall on the ground and then not be able to get off the ground. Now, big brown bats can take off the ground if they have enough space, but we do like to make sure that they're off the ground and that everybody is doing okay. Are we done with those ones over there, Brooke? Yeah. Okay. See if I can. Yes.
Were these all rescued, or how did you come by this many bats?
Yeah, so Mary Lou is asking me how we came by all of these bats. And the way that we did that is mostly from people just like you rescuing them. A large number of these bats came out of people's homes. A lot of you watching have probably had a bat in your house before. So a lot of them came out of people's homes, and those people either directly called us or they called our friends at the Nebraska Humane Society, who sent out an officer to pick them up. And as long as the bat is healthy and there's been no bite exposure to the human being, then the bats come into care with us. When we get them, usually starting in late October, if we get bats, we don't release them back into the wild because they need to be hibernating at that time. So we keep them all winter long until we can release them again like we are right now. Some of these bats are injured. So one of the most common ways for bats that come into rehab to be injured is to be brought in by cats that are free roaming outside. And free roaming cats damage a lot of wildlife. And it's a really common reason for injured small animals to come into us. And now I just maligned cats, but I love cats. But I love cats inside so that our wildlife is protected. I have 5. If I was closer to the house, I'd show you my cats, but we're not going to do that right now. Did we do okay there? Sorry, I almost got hit in the leg by a bat, so I had to step back a little bit. Amy's got a couple of bats that are biding their time. There's 3 of them there. That's not working that great. So I think it's getting a little dark for the autofocus there. If you can hear that, there's turkeys making noise out there somewhere. Ellie the Batwoman, you are so brave.
Patrick wanted to know, how long does it take to feed the bats you house at each day?
That depends on how many bats that we have awake. So the question is, how long does it take you to feed the bats that you house each day? When we have, when 400 are in the hibernaculum, we only check on them twice a week and we give them water and make sure that everybody's healthy. But it depends on the number of bats that we have feeding. So I'm going to ask Ellie, last week, on average, how long was a staff member spending feeding bats each day?
About an hour.
Okay, so that's a small load. There have been times when we've had so many bats that were thin or that they were injured and they hadn't yet learned how to feed on their own that maybe we're working 4 hours a day. Feeding bats. And then at some points in the winter, we have several volunteers, like Heather right here, and Amy over here, and Frankie, who's across the field over there, who had bats at their homes as well. And so they were spending how long? How long did you spend every day feeding your bats?
Mine must be quite slow because it takes me 1 hour to feed 8 bats.
Okay, so that's pretty average, right? So it takes a volunteer who has bats in their home, usually an hour or an hour and a half every night to feed their bats. And the way that our bat volunteers work is that they take bats home, they feed them and teach them how to self-feed on mealworms, and then they give them back to us so it's easier for the staff. And they take more and teach them how to self-feed. So our bat volunteers are incredibly valuable to the organization and, of course, to all the bats that we care for every year. Are we getting down to the last bats?
I think so.
Oh my gosh.
It is important to note that our bat volunteers are also rabies vaccinated. Even though they do wear protection every time they feed bats, we still always value the life of our volunteers and of our staff members, and so we would never want them to be put in risk, because if they're gone, they can't take care of any more animals that come in the future.
Right. And so that being said, I do want to give you guys a caveat. Everybody often, or lots of people ask us often about rabies. Less than 0.5% of all bats carry rabies. And even though every year, especially in the fall, health departments across the country will put out press releases about a positive bat or positive bat cases, they are still rare. So what we do is we want people to know that the fear of rabies is no reason to hate bats or be afraid of them, but it is a reminder to all of us that we need to be careful when we're handling wildlife. Rabies is not the only issue. Just getting bit actually can cause an injury. So we want people to be really careful when they're handling wildlife, to have the licenses that they need to not take wildlife home with them, and just always to be safe. And if you ever have a question about rabies or any other issue with a wild animal, just call us and we are happy to help. Do we have any bats left that have not been flying away?
No.
Oh my gosh, you guys.
I mean, we have ones that didn't fly away, but not very many.
Okay, so there were a whole bunch in the sky right here just a second ago, and now they all... I'm going to try to move this without going too crazy. There's one. Woo! Patrick is asking, what are their natural predators? I'm going to let somebody else talk. Where's Laura? Oh, Laura walked away. Who wants to talk about bat natural predators? Amy? Amy? Anybody? Anybody? Well, one of the things that we were talking about tonight are that there are owls out here, and owls are a natural predator to bats, so that's one thing that they have to contend with. As well as if they get on the ground, almost anything will eat our native bats. Snakes can get into bat roosts and eat different species of snakes and eat bats. Raccoons, of course. Quite frankly, for our tree-dwelling bats, like our hoary bats and our red bats, sometimes birds are their worst predators, like crows and blue jays. So any omnivore or carnivore that can get their little teeth on a bat will probably eat it because it's small and bite-sized. They just have to be able to catch them. But in the air, owls are one of the most common. What else? Are there other questions anybody has?
We've had a lot of people donate, which is really exciting.
Oh, thank you guys so much for donating.
Yeah.
We so appreciate you, and we certainly could not do this work without all of your support. And your support comes in so many different ways. It comes from coming out to events, from donating to us, learning about wildlife, and educating other people about the real facts about wildlife really helps further our mission. So every day we appreciate you guys for coming out and helping us. Oh, I'm supposed to turn this around. I'm looking at nothing instead of showing you guys my face, which I don't know that that's really that bad of a big of a deal. I'm going to turn around this way. Not seeing the building behind me. Anyway, are there any other questions before we wrap up tonight? Oh, I just have to say I have the smartest niece in the history of the universe. The question is, what is our donation goal? We did not set a donation goal for bat release. However, we do try to get about $2,000 in donations for bat release every year. One of the things that we do, here's a question that I don't think we answered on Facebook Live tonight, is that people were asking if we were going to have our regular bat release t-shirts. And, you know, so many of you guys get them every year, and we appreciate it. We all, of course, have all of the bat release t-shirts as well. But we didn't make them this year. And one of the reasons for that is because we didn't think we could handle getting them all mailed out. And we didn't know when social distancing guidelines were going to be released. So later in the year, we'll have some other bat t-shirts. We're having a lot of fun designing some other other wildlife t-shirts. And we'll put them up for sale on our website later in the year. Does anybody else have any other questions before we sign off Facebook Live tonight?
How many years is this for releasing bats publicly?
Great question. So this is actually our 11th public bat release. Last year was our 10th annual public bat release at the Jocelyn Art Museum. And this is our first virtual one. And I'm so glad you could join us. But I also hope that next year we're all back together again at the Jocelyn. How do I get that mask? Pat Favara, we'll figure something out. All right. Okay, I think we are going to wrap it up. Does anybody else on the staff want to say anything?
So say thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for tuning in.
Good night, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.
Now I have to figure out how to turn it off. Bye, everybody.